Are we sitting comfortably? Then I'll begin. Once upon a time, a young girl called Mary, who worked in the fields of Nazareth, had missed her period and realized that she was expecting, and thought to herself, I can't wait to tell the father-to-be. However, it soon dawned on her that she had a massive problem because her husband, Joseph, couldn't be the father, as they'd never actually done it. This might have been partly due to Joseph's age or him being a carpenter, and rather ironically spending most of his time making crosses. Damn it, thought Mary. How the hell am I going to explain this to Joseph? She gave the matter a lot of thought, but could not get away from the fact that Joseph was under the illusion that she was a virgin. So she eventually settled for the story that indeed was Virgin on the Ridiculous, but hopefully a story that the aged Joseph might just fall for. If not, then a death by stoning would be an inevitable fate. Mary made haste to Joseph. My darling husband, I have good news. What's that, my honey bun? Inquired Joseph excitedly. We're expecting a baby, said Mary. Fantabby-dozy, was Joseph's immediate reaction. But after a few seconds, he rather despairingly said, But we've never done it. I know, my dearest, but I was working in the field when an angel came down from heaven and said that I was going to have God's baby, replied Mary with her fingers crossed behind her back. She continued, Come to think of it, I did experience a strange feeling as I was bending over cutting the rhubarb. She nervously looked at Joseph to see his reaction, and after a period of shock and awe, he then eventually replied, Whatever. As time passed, Joseph got used to the idea of being stepfather to the Son of God and said to Mary, Look, when the baby is due, I have to go to Bethlehem to pay my taxes because I don't want to end up like Kentus Hovinus. And being my hometown, we can stay with the in-laws. Who can babysit should we want to go clubbing or stoning? Mary thought that a good idea, and Joseph immediately started looking for transport. He knew of a second-hand donkey salesman down the road and managed to get a donkey, fully insured, taxed and MOT'd. So when the time came, off they went. But because there was no equal rights for women in those godly days of innocence, it was Joseph who mostly rode the donkey, while Mary followed with the suitcases and baby buggy. Some days later they arrived at Bethlehem, but were horrified to find that Joseph's relations had gone away for the Christmas break. In desperation they went round all the inns and mule-tells, but received the same answer. You're welcome to quaff a pint or two, but all our beds are taken. You should always pre-book over the Christmas holiday period, don't you know? However, the very last innkeeper did say, Look, I do have a stable if you want to stay there. It's a bit drafty, and it's full of clean animal waste, but it's the best I can do. Oh, and breakfast is extra. Being very near her time, both Mary and Joseph had no choice but to gratefully accept this offer, despite the waste of clean animals stinking just as much as that of unclean animals. This innkeeper was to become probably one of the most significant people in the history of mankind, yet oddly enough, nobody thought of recording his name, nor that of his inn. Rumour has it that the inn was faulty something or other. Later in the night, Mary gave birth to a baby boy, and they named the child Jesus because Joseph had cried out, Jesus, his parents. The birthplace would become a problem for Jesus in later life whenever he accidentally left a door open. People would think it hilariously funny to shout, Hey, Jesus, were you born in a stable? To which he would always reply, Whatever. Then out of the blue, a hell's angel appeared and whispered to Mary out of Joseph's earshot, I like your style. I reckon you're going to pull this off, so I'm going to help you. After all, us girls must stick together. So the hell's angel rode off into the hills and came across some shepherds, telling them of the birth, but never thought of telling any grocers, plumbers, electricians, or even the local chapter. They made their way to the stable in Bethlehem, leaving their flocks unattended. The wild beasts had a field day, but the shepherds did take a lamb as a gift, completely forgetting the mint sauce. This was a good present, as cuddly toys had yet to be invented. Upon arrival, they found Joseph outside the inn having a smoke, and asked of him, where the infant was, and as to the conditions of Mary and child, to which he replied, "Stable, stable, stable." They pitied the old man's stammer. The hell's angel then travelled further afield and contacted 3 wise men. They were to be guided by a bright star and brought gifts of gold, frankincense and myrrh. Not the sort of gifts really for someone who later on in life was to say that a rich man has more chance of driving a camel through the eye of a needle than going to heaven. Now for some reason these wise men were not so wise, because although the shepherds found the stable without the aid of a star or sat-nav, the 3 not so wise men, who did have a benefit of the star, managed to get lost and instead ended up at King Herod's palace. They told Herod the story of their journey, and upon realizing that the 3 wise men had not really intended to visit him, and that their gifts were not actually meant for him, but were for a mere baby, Herod became rather miffed. So he asked the 3 wise men to tell him of the whereabouts of Jesus once they had found him, under the pretense that he also wanted to pay homage to the infant. However, they decided that if Herod was too stupid not to be able to follow the star, then he could jolly well find Jesus himself. In a fit of desperation, Herod ordered all newly born male babies to be killed. He had a very good alibi though, because his action would be brushed off as merely one more in the long line of genocides of innocents, masterminded by the then head honcho, Yahweh. Also, he had a get-out-of-jail card, knowing that if later on he accepted this Jesus as his king, all would be forgiven, no matter how horrendous his crimes. Mary and Joseph got wind of Herod's plans. Jesus got wind as well, but luckily the innkeeper had given them a bottle of gripe water. They looked through the brochures and decided to apply for asylum in Egypt, albeit not the most obvious choice considering the enslavement of their ancestors by the Egyptians many centuries earlier. Yahweh watched from heaven with a smug grin as his out-of-wedlock son made his escape, while Herod was slaughtering all the other newborn baby boys. But Yahweh did think, what a waste of foreskins. So it came to pass, apart from the grief-stricken parents of the slaughtered baby boys, they all lived happily ever after. Until Muhammad came along, that is.